welcome to On Deadline. I'm Dennis Owens.
I'm Kendra Nichols.
And I'm Amanda St. Hilaire. Thank you for joining us.
If you're listening for the first time, we are journalists for ABC 27 News in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
But on this podcast, we talk about issues that affect people all over.
So these are the conversations you don't hear on the news. We're different generations with different experiences, so we don't always agree.
But we do get very personal, get very real, and hopefully get you thinking.
We are recording on Monday, September 11th, 2017. Today we're talking about training your brain to make better decisions, control emotions, teaching kids how to do that in sports, but also applying that to the rest of life.
Then we'll talk about the so-called hidden pots of money in Pennsylvania's budget, what the budget battles say about state politics and what it all means for your money.
And finally, we'll hear a word from you, the comments and questions you sent in. And this week, we're going to change things up a little bit.
But first, we want to talk about conditioning from the neck up. That's the name of Marvin Worthy's clinic for middle and high school athletes. Mental preparation, work ethic, awareness, all great things for kids and adults to be learning. So Marvin is here with us today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for being here.
What made you decide to start this clinic?
Well, I run a Friday night youth program. I'm in my 14th year, 4th grade to 12th grade. The idea happened because I wanted to create an opportunity where young people have a place to go, a safe place to go, and participate in a sport that they love, but give me the opportunity to take full advantage of a captive audience so I can pour into their growth and development.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it got kicked off. And so a lot of my students who come to my program on Friday nights are athletes. It's at the Chambersburg YMCA, and so they play a lot of basketball. Well, basketball is my passion. I played it from when I was knee-high to a grasshopper until college. And so I'm watching students who, where there are areas of their game that need to be developed, but I don't see any of them practicing those areas of their game. So I do what I call timeouts. And I always do timeout when the score is 15-16. Right? So they don't like the fact that I do, but I have their undivided attention. So I remember asking a question, do you love the game? And they said, of course we love the game. I said, where's the evidence? They said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you love something, right, shouldn't there be evidence? They said, yes. I said, well, if you love the game, where's the evidence? They said, we don't understand. I said, how many of you would agree that there's areas of your game that need to be developed? All the hands go up. I give you 5 hours every Friday night, and none of you are taking advantage of it. And so if you love it, why are you disrespecting it? And so I realized that although they loved the game, they didn't have great mental preparation. They didn't understand if they played the game in practice, if you will, or recreation in a certain way, they were creating bad habits.
Like what?
Not hustling back on defense. Not giving it 110%, not understanding the need to communicate during the game. All the things you need to do to be successful wasn't happening. In addition to that, if things were not going well, they lost it emotionally. And then they became a liability and not an asset to their team. And so they were building these skill sets or these habits, if you will, that was detrimental to the game. So I said, I got to do something about it.
How do you train your brain then to control your emotions? Because that's something that doesn't just apply to sports. That applies to a lot of things.
And the way I was going to ask the question is, you're obviously setting up basketball as a metaphor for life here, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I use basketball to teach the game of life. Let me give you an example when we talk about mental. When you talk about, here's what I believe, preparation breeds competence, and competence breeds confidence, which gives you permission to walk with a swagger. Not boastful, arrogant, but because you know you did your homework, you did your preparation, you walk with a confidence that people appreciate and respect, right? And so they were not preparing mentally. Let me give you an example. I teach the game of basketball to teach the game of life. So I posed a question, what is a half-court line for? They said jump ball. I said, okay, after jump ball, what is it for? Well, it's a half-court line. I said, no, it's a mental reminder that it's time to transition.
From offense to defense.
From offense to defense. And I can't play offense or defense physically until I made the transition mentally. Because what? how my stance, my position, the way I look at the game on defense is very different than offense. But if I don't make the transition in my head first, then I don't make it physically. That's why people backdoor me when I'm not paying attention, because I haven't made the transition. Because what? Mentally, I'm still caught up in the fact that I didn't believe the call that the ref made on me on offense was a good call. Right? Yeah. And so mental means, how do I recognize when I am emotionally invested in something, but it's directing me in the wrong direction in order for me to make a positive contribution. So when I recognize that, hey, I'm heated, I'm upset, how do I manage that emotion? How do I get back to the point that this is a team sport that requires me to be focused and not unfocused?
Sports can truly reveal somebody's character. I mean, you watch any game, how somebody celebrates, how do they help another player up when they're down? When something bad happens, do they pick themselves up and move on? But you can watch sports and see a person's character, I believe. One of my favorites, I wanted to share a quick story from a parent's perspective. My son wrestles. That's a tough sport. It's a one-on-one thing.
You got no one else to blame.
And I admit I'm the crazy mom that's sitting on the sidelines screaming. Okay. Very embarrassing. But I'm trying to support him.
Is there a video of this somewhere?
Yes, there is, and I'm completely embarrassed. I just transform into something else. But anyway.
Self-awareness.
Yeah. The point is, my favorite, and I tell my son, who's 16 now, my favorite match that he ever had, he went all 3 periods. He was on his back all 3 periods, but he never let the guy pin him. And he came off and he was just like, oh, I'm like, I am so proud of you because you never gave up. When you're fighting and you're out there wrestling and it's long periods, man, I can see it in their face. Sometimes they're just like, I'm just going to let him pin me, so this is over. But I was so proud of him for fighting all 3 periods and never letting the guy pin him. And I was like, to me, I was just like, that's what I want my son to be, somebody who never gives up.
Awesome.
So that's why I think sometimes sports can truly show you, how somebody's character.
Yeah, which is interesting that part of the game doesn't always get developed. I think when we talk about athletics, we're so focused on the physical and the form, but so much of this that you're describing is mental, which I think we know on paper, but don't always apply in real life.
And coaching, in order to coach the mental aspect of a game, you must teach in the moment. It's not the X's
when you have
and
the
O's.
specific example right in front of you where you...
that you can address it, which is clear to them because they just participated in it, and then you do the correction.
Not just some philosophical thing that may or may not happen to you.
It's got to be, look, you got to get your head back in the game. I know your shot's not falling, but you do know how to rebound. And if you keep barking at the referee, he may kick you out of the game. And if we don't have you, we don't have anything.
Right.
And so it has to become mentally, I have to move from being selfish to being selfless. Right? And so in practice, in terms of preparing the mind for game situations, I create scenarios. Here's the situation. How are you going to handle it when it's you? How do you manage fatigue? When you're exhausted, how do you mentally manage it? You got to realize that when you're fatigued, if you practice this, if you practice while you're fatigued, how to shoot a free throw, how to shoot a jump shot, you have to make some mental adjustments in your head so you can make the mental adjustments physically, which means what? I may have to get off my feet a little more because my arms are tired. Or my legs are tired, I need to use my arms a little more. Those are all mental adjustments that you have to make game time situations. And so my shot's off, okay. Am I wallowing in pity? Am I trying to find a different way to contribute because my team needs me? That's all a mental adjustment. If I don't make it mentally, I don't make it physically.
And then you have to deal with all the crazy people like me in the stands that are screaming.
Well, I was going to ask, what role do parents play in all this? Because we're in an age where you do have the, quote, helicopter parents. You have parents who think that their kid is the star and should be the star at all times. And that can counteract probably some of what you're trying to teach in terms of getting your head in the game and being selfless instead of selfish. So what do you observe with that, and what should parents know about all this?
Well, parents are parents, right? But they're not coaches. And we have to teach parents.
Looking at you, Kendra.
No, really, because if a parent can be a parent, what I mean by that, I think they play a role in the sport. Being supportive, being encouraging, but the key is what role they play before the game and what role they play after the game. During the game can be a bit confusing. Mm-hmm. Should I be listening to mom or should I be listening to coach? Because there's
Spoiler
some moms,
alert, coach.
you follow me? And so I think parents need to understand that our sons and daughters are under enough pressure, having to make sure that the game plan is in order, and I'm doing all the things that I've been asked to do. Then I hear mom, whose voice can be loud sometimes. And here we go again. I have to learn how to mentally ignore that voice and focus on the voice that matters right now. Because I'll see mom at home. I'll get all that later, right? And so moms need to understand that if your son is trying to focus in on what he is being told to do or she is being told to do, you may want to just lower your voice a bit, pick the most appropriate time. Maybe a timeout is the time you yell the most versus during the game. But they play a role in taking the pressure off their sons and daughters. Give them permission to be imperfect. You can't expect them to know what they haven't been taught. And so when you understand those kinds of things, you can be a cheerleader and a support for your student athlete and not make it difficult to try to understand two voices at once.
And there's so much pressure on kids now. I don't have kids, but as my husband and I talk about what we want to do when we do have kids, I don't know how parents figure out when to push, because you want to be able to have that mental toughness. You want your child to be the best he or she can be, but you don't want to be overbearing and you don't want to put an unreasonable amount of pressure. So how do you find that balance?
What I say to my daughter, I have an 8-year-old daughter and a 34-year-old son. So anybody that wants to pray for me, you're more than welcome.
That's a nice gap.
Yeah.
And so I think we ask for permission. Do I have permission to be a part of this sport with you? And let's talk about expectations. What role do you want me to play? Do you want me to be your workout partner? Or do you want me to be your accountability partner? If you tell me you're going to shoot 1,000 free throws a week, do you want me to play the role that holds you accountable to that goal? What role do you want me to play? Because parents want to be involved.
You have that conversation with an 8-year-old?
No,
about accountability and...
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have to with my 8-year-old. Because my 8-year-old is she's very confident.
Yes.
And so I need to have confidence. But I don't pressure. My passion is basketball. Right now, that's not her passion. Mm-hmm. Her passion is dance. Now, occasionally I'll say, thought about basketball recently? She'll say, no, Daddy. I said, no problem. I'm just checking in. But I would never put the pressure on them, right? I think sometimes parents, if we didn't have the kind of success in the sport that we love, we sometimes want to live through our children. And sometimes that pressure can be unhealthy because we want them to be better than we were. And it may not be the sport that they love at all. They're just doing it out of an obligation or a commitment or a sense of pressure. So we have to be careful about how we introduce our children to the sports that we love.
If a parent has, and I ask this because it's something I know a lot of families go through, if a parent has a child who doesn't want to do a sport anymore, how do you balance, you don't want them to quit, but you at the same time want to respect their decisions. How do you balance that?
That's a tough thing, but I think, I just believe in being proactive. If my daughter says to me, I want to play such and such, I said, okay, if you make the commitment, you're not just making a commitment to you or to me, but you're making a commitment to an entire team, and in some cases to an entire community. So if you're going to make the decision to be involved, you have to be expected to put in the year.
Right. So
otherwise, it's unfair to everyone else.
Right. So that's with ours. We've faced this ourselves, and our rule is if you start the season and say you're going to do it, you got to finish the season. Now, when the season's over and you don't want to do it anymore, that's fine. We can have that discussion. But once you start it, you got to finish that season.
Ask 2 questions all the time. Based on today's practice or today's game, what did you love and what did you learn? What did you love and what did you learn? Right? Because then that opens up the doors for conversation about how I can teach, coach, support. I think those are 2 great questions parents should always ask their students. What did you love today and what did you learn?
And that learning part is so key. I have 0 athletic abilities, but when I was in high school, I ran cross country. because the coach's rule was pretty much if you show up and if you're willing to go through those practices, you're on the team. And even though it is probably the thing I've done that I've been worst at in life, it was one of the best experiences based on what you learn and learning that mental toughness and learning that it's okay to not be the best, because now there is that pressure to be the best at everything and to not be able to do things that you do not excel in, I guess. And so when you talk about what did you learn, I think that resonates with a lot of people.
And I think, for example, I think I can use any sport and teach the game of life. I use basketball because that's my passion and that's my experience. When I talk to young people, I always want to teach them about the game. You know, the difference between a good player and a great player is having an IQ in the sport in which you play, understanding its history, understanding what it can give to you. I created a program because I participated in a program like this in North Philadelphia. It saved my life. It literally saved my life. Trust me. That if I didn't have the option to go play basketball, I would have went ahead and done something else. And the people I hung out with who did something else didn't always come back. You follow me? Mm-hmm. So I pay it forward for a real reason. I know I'm saving lives, number one. But when I look at the game of basketball and I talk about the half-court line earlier, then I talk about the out-of-bounds line. I ask young people, what is it there for? Where's out of bounds? No, you have to learn how to master the space you've been given. You should master it in such a way that you never have to look down to see where the out-of-bounds line is. The same is true for life. You have to understand that there's certain rules and regulations in the life in which we live. You have to understand them so well that you never step outside those boundaries. If you understand the game of basketball, it'll teach you the game of life. You can't participate in the sport just as an individual. It requires a community of people. And you have to establish a level of respect and appreciation for every team member. Because you're 10 players, it means you're one machine with 10 working parts, and every individual part is significant. Even the person that may not get to play that day can play a significant role in your ability to succeed, whether they're cheering you, encouraging you, whatever it may be. And so when we understand the game that we play and use it as a tool to move to the next level in our lives. See, if I can endure some of the things that young athletes endure during a game, I might be able to endure a pressure situation at work. I mean, all of it, I believe, is transferable. And so as a coach, as a parent, ask the question, what do you love and what did you learn? And teach in the moment. And I think that's the advantage of a good sport.
I'm going to take your audio clips and play them for my son every morning. Don't go out of bounds, son.
But it sounds like a lot of it does come down to self-awareness, knowing your body, knowing your mind, and being able to ask yourself the tough questions.
And you know, I believe in affirmations. You become what you speak. I'm a poor foul shooter. Well, say you're a great foul shooter and do what it takes to be great. I'll give you an example. My coach, when I played at Shippensburg, I guess he was trying to embarrass me, I don't know. Anyway, he said, hey, Worthy, understand you shot 77% from the free throw line throughout your basketball career. Yes. He calls the whole team in, right, and creates a scenario, puts me at the line. He said, I bet you can't make 7 out of 10. I bet you a Coke, right? So I go 9 for 10, right? And he walks away, no Coke, right? But my point is that in those positions, we have the ability to motivate and inspire young people to go beyond their best. We really do. Because when you become committed to a coach and to a team, there's nothing you won't try to do. But I can't do what I don't know how to do. And so I need to be coached. I need to be trained. And so the learning comes in when I can identify, hey, Howard, you're a great player, but your left hand's weak. But here's what we can do, right? And I probably wouldn't use the word weak. I've transitioned a little bit. Here's your strengths and here's your areas of development. Because language is important to young people. You know, let's identify your areas of development. Boy, I think if you practice every day that left hand, you're going to be tough to cover in this league. You want to be tough to cover? You want to be a tough cover? Yes, Coach Worthy. Well, if you do A, B, and C, you're going to be a hard cover. And so let's identify those areas of development and let's coach kids to the next level. Now, mentally, I got to teach you the importance of habits. You can't say, if I say do it 5 times a day and you don't do it on Monday, you say, oh, I'll do it 10 times on Tuesday.
Yeah, right.
Then come Friday, you're 40 behind, right? It's about consistency. A habit isn't 5 times on Monday, 15 on Friday. No, it's 5 Monday, 5 Tuesday, and you create a habit. And that habit is what allows you to grow beyond your current circumstances.
It's the mental aspect of sports in general is plays such a big role. And when I used to teach gymnastics, we all have the ability to do back handsprings, but it's whether.
No, we don't.
Yes, we can. I'll teach you how to do one.
Okay.
But our bodies are made the same. We have the ability if we learn the steps. But most people, it was when I would teach girls, I'd be spotting them with. I'm barely spotting them. It was mental. They just needed that mental, and if you can get past the mental part. Dennis, you want me to teach you?
I cannot cross my legs Indian style. I'm sure I cannot do a back handspring.
I think the next viral video from ABC 27 is going to be Kendra teaching Dennis how to do a back handspring.
We'll do it.
Would be right.
But it just makes me think, when you were saying you choose your words wisely too, and how you address your athletes, I think that plays a key role. Because I used to see that. I'd be like, I know you can do this. I'm telling you, I'm spotting you with a finger. Like, you don't need me to do this. But it was just the mental block of, I can't do this. But no, you can.
But there are also some people I know who are going to be listening to this saying, you know what? Tough love. We should use words like weak. We should be doing all those things. We're being too soft on kids nowadays. What's your response to people who have that kind of mentality?
Here's my response to that. People grow and develop different ways. And every athlete is at a different stage of their own growth and development, mentally and emotionally. It's important that I know the character and the personality of the players I'm coaching. Because for some players, I can say, Tom, you need to get it done. What's the problem? That motivates Tom. If I said the same thing to Tony, Tony's done. I can't get anything from Tony.
Shut down.
I need to have to say to Tony, Tony, I know you made a commitment and a promise to deliver on this. You know, it doesn't appear to be happening. What do we need to do to get you moving forward?
It's kind of like parenting different children.
Yeah,
and it's amazing.
absolutely.
I just saw a documentary on John Madden, the great coach of the Oakland Raiders, and he said, Jim Otto, who's a Hall of Fame center,
Yes.
I had to kick him in the butt and shout, curse words at him like, "What are you doing?"
Right.
And that would work for him. But Gene Upshaw, who was 6'4", 320, was actually a sensitive guy that needed more of a hug to get him to do what he's going to do. And John Madden was able to read those individual guys to get the most out of them.
You can't coach every athlete the same way.
And that's a great leadership lesson, too.
Yeah, you can't. It's just not. You can. You're not going to get the same results. It's got to be about relationship. As a former college administrator, what I did on the front end is I built relationship with students, and when they made poor decisions, they didn't come into my office going, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do that. They come to my office saying, I know, Mr. Worthy, I'm sorry. Why? Because I have a relationship. I didn't want my first interaction to be me disciplining them. And so when it came time to discipline, I had a relationship. So you're more likely to hear what I have to say. You follow me? Same is true in coaching. If I can build relationships, Wooden built relationships with his, so he understood how they ticked and what motivated them. And we can understand that as coaches, man, we're on our way.
Well, and it's a fascinating topic
And
too.
bosses.
Well, I used to cover sports here, and
Right.
you would see
I
high school.
remember you.
Well, you would see high school football players that the Notre Dames and USC's of the world would love to have them. So they have the athletic ability to play at the highest levels in this nation. Can't get the basic grades and or just get certain things, something going on there that's not unlocked properly to allow them to take advantage of these unbelievable opportunities, which is very frustrating to see.
Oh, absolutely. I wasn't the best student in school, but you wasn't going to outwork me.
Right.
You follow me? That I knew I had to work a little harder in some subjects, but I wasn't going to be outworked. But the key from my success was that I had people around me. The company you keep is important.
Right.
If I say I'm going to be a rocket scientist, I don't want to hang around people who say, no, you're not.
Right.
I want to hang around people that says, I think you will be. Maybe I should consider it. Right?
I just heard a great quote this weekend. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
That's
what
right.
they're saying to kids.
Hey, tell me the 5 people you hang around the most, and I'll know who you are. That's real. The company we keep, and the same in sport. I need to surround myself with people who are encouraging, who have a similar work ethic. So you got to practice the sport. See, some players who have arrived and they're getting accolades, sometimes that can be damaging to a degree. If I become a little arrogant, I don't think I have to work as hard anymore because I'm dominating the sport.
Yeah.
I played point guard. The players I played against was usually 6 foot tall or more. But mentally, I had to think about how I could beat someone who was taller and stronger. Well, I'm quicker.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to be running around all day with me. Right? And I remember it got to a point in high school, I remember when I played the same team, they'd be like, who's got Worthy? You get him. No, he wore me out last time. You get Worthy. Because I'm gonna outwork you, right? And then I had to work hard in practice on how to change my shot to shoot over taller players. I had to practice that. And so when you identify your areas of development, you have to go practice that. And then the mental part is that you got to believe. It doesn't matter that he's stronger or taller. I'm going to beat him. I'm going to find ways to beat him today. And I speak that into my life. And so,
Mr. Worthy, I want to be your agent, and what we're going to work on is going to the IBMs of the world and the largest corporation, and you're going to take what you're saying, and you say it so powerfully. I could listen to you talk all day.
I appreciate that.
To how we take your principles and apply it to the corporate world. And there'd be a great audience for you, and there'd be big dollars in it for you, probably. And I'll take a small cut as well.
Wait, what about us? We're here.
I called him Dennis.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I just came from spending some time with John Maxwell at a convention in Ohio, but I'm the founder and CEO of Worthy Consulting and Training.
Oh, you're already ahead of me, then, is what you're saying. You're already doing that.
No, I'm not ahead of you. We need to build a relationship. There's some corporations I haven't been to yet. But you're right. It's all about leadership, even at the corporate level. How do we position ourselves? There are a lot of people who call themselves leaders, but there's nobody following them. So how do you get to name yourself a leader?
I've met a few of those.
Right? You're a leader when people are following you. You're a leader when in your absence, the work that needs to get done gets done with great passion, even in your absence. That means that you have led people. You have articulated the vision in such a way, just like coaching.
And you've motivated the people
and
to do it.
And you've motivated people to do it.
Whereas right now, I think the mentality is, if things can't run without me, then I must be so valuable. And that's where the workaholism, I think, of our work culture comes in too.
Yeah. For me, I believe that learning takes place when I pitch, you catch, and then we switch. So oftentimes leadership, and even in schools, and I work with school districts and colleges and universities across the country, we talk about how to build relationships, how to build leadership skills, etc. But my success, in large part, is because I recognize that my audience can teach me. I know that when I leave my audiences, that I leave with the ability to take a little piece of them with me that makes me better, gives me more insight. I've learned something I didn't know before. I heard a perspective I never even considered, and it makes me better. And so when you can create a learning environment where there's an exchange, see, I believe that in order to really walk away from an experience and take away great value, you have to be an active participant in your own learning. But as a speaker, I need to facilitate that process. And so I'm not a lecturer. I don't sit behind a podium. I'm in the audience with people, And so that makes all the difference. Same with coaching. I want to pull you out of practice when you made the decision. Say, let's talk about the consequences of that decision, and help. Don't give them the answer right away, but let's walk through what you could have done differently that would have benefited the team. Well, help them find their own answers sometimes.
And
too.
it's the recognition that you don't always have the answers. And sometimes that's what we see as strength or as leadership, is someone who has all the answers. When really, and I heard a great quote the other day, it's more the ability to recognize a great idea or recognize the answer when you hear it.
You know what leaders, please.
No, go ahead.
You know what leaders never ask, and it's probably the most important question if you want to be a great leader? How am I doing as your leader, as your coach? Ask for evaluation from the people that you think you're leading and that you believe you're coaching.
Sometimes people are afraid of that answer.
Right? That's the difference between good leaders and great leaders, because I want to know. And I don't, and you have to be able to get to a place in your growth and development where you don't personalize everything. Because they say something you don't believe, simply say, you know what? Wow, that's a shock for me. Because that's not how I want to be perceived. But tell me what I'm doing or not doing that's creating that perception. Because I want to move beyond that, because I need you to see me as approachable, not unapproachable. Versus getting defensive. What? What are you talking about? You don't get to talk to me that way.
I don't get defensive.
Right? You follow me? You know, and so it takes a special kind of coach and leader to do that. It really does.
How do people find you if they want to? They want to.
I want to come hang out at your house.
Monday morning, give us a little pep talk for the
come hang out. Well, there's a couple ways. You can go to my website, obviously, which is www.worthyconsulting.org.
And we'll link to that in our show notes.
Yep. And then you can call us at the office at 717-263-6195. And that's Worthy Consulting and Training.
Thank you so much.
Have you ever thought about taking some of the leadership skills down to the Capitol as they're working on budgets?
I knew you were going to tie state politics into this. I was waiting for it.
Well, just let me know when.
They need to know where the out of bounds lines are.
I think I have to be invited. I have to have a ticket to that conversation, I think.
I think Dennis could hook you up with one.
Well, I can't guarantee they listen. That's the problem.
Thank you so much for being here and kind of collectively blowing our minds.
Well, thanks for letting me. And I want to do a shout out to Angela Pritchard, who sort of connected us.
Yes,
And
she
so,
was on
shout
a
out
few
to
weeks
her.
ago talking
she's been a
about
guest on this
food,
show.
and she is
She's
lovely
awesome.
and wonderful.
Oh, she's awesome, yeah.
And she wasn't kidding when she said you'd be great.
Well, I appreciate
thank you,
that.
Angela.
Thank you.
So state lawmakers love to compare Pennsylvania's budget to your family budget. So when my family's budget is not balancing, I either need to make cuts or find new revenue. But a group of Republican lawmakers is pushing for a way with hidden pots of money. And Dennis, I got to tell you, I wish that were an option in my family's budget.
I want hidden pots of money.
Can you explain what's going on and what that means for us average folk?
Well, there are about 400 different funds that get money steered to it through the course of the year. Some of them have savings and checkings accounts. A number of House Republicans, mostly from our part of the state, poured over every single line over the last 6 weeks trying to find money.
Because right now there isn't a plan to fully fund
Correct.
the budget.
So everybody agreed to spend $32 billion. We're now having conflict as to how we fund the $32 billion. And that's been the bottom line is we're in another budget impasse, whether they want to call it that or not. They're not really calling it that, but that's what we're in. It's over 2 months late, going on 3 months late, and we're still at loggerheads as to what to do. The Senate passed a plan that would fund it, but would require taxes of Marcellus Shale drillers and of all of your phone bills, your electric bill, your natural gas bill, which these House Republicans are balking at that and trying to come up with another answer. So they're looking at all these pots of money. There is great debate as to whether these pots of money can be touched. Now, the House Republicans insist. We sat with lawyers as we went over these lines. There are 400 funds with $12 billion in them statewide. What they want to touch is about 1.6 billion, 1.7 billion of those pots of money.
Where are these pots of money?
Well, all different, okay, across state government, but some of it is earmarked towards transportation. Some of it is for environmental programs, and they have, according to these House Republicans, surpluses. So they want to take surpluses from these accounts. Sounds so tidy. Except other people are saying, do you really think if we had all that money sitting there, we wouldn't have touched this sooner?
Well, so is it actual extra money, or is it like when I have, $300 that's in my account, I haven't spent it yet, but I know it's going to go toward this bill that's going to hit me at the end
Somewhere
of
in the middle lies the truth.
Okay.
So you have a whole bunch of people trying to protect their pots of money saying you can't possibly touch that, and I don't know to what degree that's absolutely true.
And we've already started to get
then-
the press releases
Right, we're
from
getting the
people
blowback.
who don't want that money
There's some
touched.
people saying that these House Republicans' math is fuzzy, which is the scenario you just pointed out. That is, that money is accounted for. Other people saying you can't legally touch it. Other people saying you morally shouldn't touch it. So that is, hey, we've got so let's say we've got to wait until we have $10 million to start giving grants out for certain things. That doesn't mean that $10 million is completely unaccounted for. And if you rate it, now it takes it back to zero, and then you got to build it back up to 10 before you start giving grants out.
That's what I was going to ask you. Why do they have these hidden pots of money?
Correct. So now you're asking a very good question, a fair question. I think it's interesting that we shine a light on this, in that what is the role of government and how much things should we be doing for all people? That's a conversation that needs to happen at the federal level and at the state level. Should you be all things to all people? Now, many of these programs are perfectly fine programs that sound like good things, but when you're in a budget deficit, do you have to make difficult decisions? And maybe it's not going to be as many things.
And
do
those difficult decisions include taking a look at what we pay state lawmakers and per diems and pensions?
And how about the fact that the state lawmakers according to their budget, want to increase their fund 5%. They want to give themselves a 5% increase in the overall allocation when the rest of the budget went up by 1.9%.
Classy.
Yeah, so they want. That's one of the things they're looking to do. So that is now the fight. I've just kind of laid out where the fight is. Do they have the votes in the House? A very good source, told me doesn't quite think so. They have about 85 votes. You need 102. So you got to get 102 in the House to send it over to the Senate. And then who knows what happens in the Senate.
Well, then, so what happens if this stalemate that they're not calling a stalemate continues?
So now
what does that mean for us?
Now we have more debate, okay? So now you have more of a conflict. So according to House Republicans, look, we've got $31 billion of the 32-something that we know is they've not stopped taking state taxes out of your check.
Right.
They have not stopped collecting sales taxes from when you buy something.
I've noticed.
Exactly. They have not stopped taking PennDOT fees and various, they are continuing to collect money. The Auditor General, the Treasurer, and the Governor, now please note they're all Democrats, have said, oh my goodness, by next Friday, we don't have the money to pay the bills and the sky will fall and there's no...
We hear that every year, though.
Well, that's what it feels like, doesn't it? That's certainly
yes.
what it feels like. And as I just said, they haven't stopped taking money out of your check. So if you know your bill is $32 billion over the course of the year, and you're pretty sure of getting close to $31 billion, why is the last $1 billion so earth-shattering right now is what many people are asking. However, the Auditor General, the Treasurer, and the Governor are all saying it is a big deal.
Right.
When they're looking at these pots of money, have they gone through and looked at things like, for example, what do we spend on paper at the state government level? That's like my pet peeve. And I talk to you about this, Dennis, all the time. When I file a right to know request with state police, for example, I email them. Mm-hmm. Instead of emailing me back, they send me back thick packets of paper.
Right.
And you're paying for postage and all of that.
And envelopes.
And envelopes and all of that.
I agree. In this age,
has to add up. Maybe not to $1 billion, but it's got to add up to something.
Right. And there's lots. So anecdotally, and this was a great quote from one of the lawmakers. He said, we all feel like there are bloated accounts in state government. And I think what we found here is that there are some. But, of course, it's like anything in state government. The minute you try to touch someone's pot of money, they're not happy about it.
It's hard to take something away once it's already been given.
And that's an interesting... That's really a topic for a whole nother podcast too. I
mean,
at both the federal and the state level.
Yeah.
I mean, so one of the issues with the whole quote unquote Obamacare is once somebody's got something,
with DACA,
with DACA, once somebody's got something, it's now difficult to take it away. As well, it should be, by the way. But that means it's very difficult. Doesn't mean you shouldn't though. Automatically, just because there's lots of people complaining. So this is we will see what's going on. If nothing else, I do think. My question is, why isn't somebody looking at every pot of money all the time in state government? Why is it such
the first time I've ever heard of
this? Why is
this such idea?
Why is it such a novel idea? That's exactly right. And somebody should be regulating that all the time or looking at it.
I think you need to write a State Politics for Dummies book. I feel like that would do really well.
Well, I would fit in the dummy part of that.
Great.
I think Kendra and I feel like we're the dummies when we're sitting here listening to you explain it to us each week. Okay, now it's time for a word from you, the comments and questions you sent us this week. We're doing something a little different because we figured out that you can actually record audio on your phone. A lot of phones have apps where you can do that, voice memos, whatever, and send it to us. And we can play it.
Nice.
So rather than just doing an email where tone can get misinterpreted, we can now hear your voice and hear your thoughts. So to test it out, I had some friends record some thoughts
full
about
disclosure.
episodes. We had to cut it down because there were a lot of thoughts, which was great. So
Is Sylvie St. Hilaire one of them?
she is not, but that is the best idea, and I will have to get her on that. Now that she knows what a podcast is. Right. So Eric Summel, our producer, has them all lined up. Let's play one of them.
I really enjoyed the podcast on climate change. I thought it was very well presented in the fact that there were two sides to the argument. I would really appreciate also a little bit more in depth on the political side of things. I know we briefly touched on the Paris Agreement, but I think an entire episode even on the details of that and a little bit more information on the backstory of that would be greatly appreciated as well.
All right.
They want to see the weather team on here again.
They're popular guys.
Yeah, and again, the difficulty is once you wade into the political side of that, it's a very, very polarizing topic, and
we
so
specialize in those.
I'm happy to do. We're happy to do it, but then you know. The trepidation people would have is that really, and it's, for me, I understand the politics of it, but I don't have the science background and knowledge to know who's right on that.
And our meteorologists specialize in the science,
Yeah.
but they're not necessarily wanting to wade into the politics of it. But hey, maybe that is a whole separate episode.
Or a couple of episodes. I mean, it's obviously
really.
a huge topic, and as hurricane after hurricane comes churning at us, who isn't thinking to themselves, is this global warming? Although they've, clearly they've said you can't necessarily point to one event and say that is.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we're not just talking about one event anymore.
Two and maybe more, who knows?
I think we have another one.
My comment is to the podcast episode regarding why college costs are skyrocketing. I fully believe that while in high school, students need to research employment options and education training for workforce preparedness. They should also, though, consider the salary that they'll potentially make coming out of college and the lifestyle that they want to live. If they want to be an artist, fine, but you have to have a realistic discussion about it. Estimate your monthly profits and then add in your future possible monthly expenses, but put it out into a spreadsheet so your kids can see what exactly they're dealing with. Maybe then they'll decide, oh, well, okay, maybe I should be a teacher and then do art on the side as a second job.
So this comes from someone who studied accounting and loves spreadsheets even more than I do.
I laugh because my one daughter tells me she wants to be a rich and famous artist. And I go, they don't really go hand in hand.
No, actually, the rich and famous artists are dead.
That's what I told her.
And the point is, they're not rich and famous while they're doing it. It's 100 years later.
That's what I told her. I said,
people are spending $14 million for their paintings well after the fact.
I said, typically it's after you're gone that you're rich, kind of. But yeah, it's so true. And we talked about that. First reporting job, I made $18,000 a year. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So I think that is really something that people need to think about.
Mm-hmm. So please send us your voice recordings. It's really cool when we get to hear your actual voice. Tell us your name, where you're from. Try to keep it to about 30 seconds or so. If it's more than that, we'll probably need to cut it down. And you can send that in an email to the investigators, THE investigators, at abc27.com. We did get a good old-fashioned email about our Confederate Monuments podcast episode. We got a lot of response from that. Really thoughtful responses. It's so nice when people actually listen to the episodes instead of reading the headlines. Kendra, I know that's your favorite.
Yeah.
So we got this one from Meredith, who said, I don't think what is in the hearts of the white people in power who erected these monuments is really relevant here. That assumes we are passing judgment on those past individuals by removing the monuments, when the point is not to judge them, but to begin to repair the present. She goes on to say, it's not the non-marginalized people to decide whether a particular monument is causing further harm to a marginalized group. Only the marginalized themselves can make that judgment. And Meredith goes on to say, think of a simple set of scales. Each year I put 3 pounds on the left and 1 pound on the right. After 250 years, I decide from now on, to be fair, I will instead put 2 pounds on each side every year. Will those scales ever balance?
Interesting analogy.
Yeah. Great email. Can't read the whole thing here.
Right, it's interesting.
But we received a lot of thoughtful messages like that.
And there was
one.
a very thoughtful story on CBS Sunday Morning this week in which a black church has a stained glass that pays tribute to Stonewall Jackson because and the pastors rectified. It's been there for 100 and some years, and Stonewall Jackson was apparently ahead of his time as a slave owner in wanting to educate African Americans. And anyway, the whole title and the last words of the story were, "It's complicated." And
It's true.
in that community, it's complicated.
Yeah, and I mean, most things worth discussing do have some kind of level of complication, but unfortunately, I think sometimes that makes people run away
Right.
or it's uncomfortable, and that can make it difficult to get anywhere. If you would like to check out the links to the stories, articles, and videos we discussed, you can find them in our show notes on our website, abc27.com. To get On Deadline delivered directly to your phone, tablet, or computer each week, you can subscribe in iTunes or Google Play Music. Please take a few minutes, leave us a review in iTunes. We do read them. We got some great new ones this week. We'd love to get more. Your thoughts help us figure out what we're doing well and what we can improve. If you have feedback you'd like to send us, you can record an audio note or write us an email at theinvestigators, THE investigators, at abc27.com. You can also send any news tips that way, any questions for us, or topics you'd like us to discuss on future podcast episodes. Thank you, Eric Semmel, for producing this podcast, Jason Dietz for composing and recording the music. It's time for us to go. We're on deadline. Way to hijack my line, Dennis. You get the point.